One of the most famous sikhs of the Rebbe for Shavuos is the sikha in Chelek Ches, the first sikha for Shavuos. There the Rebbe brings what the Svarim say, that the taina of the Malachim that they wanted the Torah to be given to them is based on the din of our Metzre. He quotes the Gemara, where the Gemara says, "B'shor shalom Moshe l'Amorim," when Moshe went to Shemayim, he asked that Eibush should give him the Torah, and Eibush told Moshe Rabbeinu to answer him, and Moshe Rabbeinu said, "What does it say in the Torah?" It says in the Torah, "Nich Hashem lekecha asher etzicha me'eretz Mitzrayim." So he said to the Malachim, "You went to Mitzrayim." Then it says, "Le'yilachol kim acherim." Do you live amongst goyim who worship Avodah Zarah, that we're afraid you worship Avodah Zarah? Do you malacha that you have to rest on Shabbos? Do you do business? Do you have parents that you have to do kibbutz aveim? Do you have jealousy? Do you have a yetzer hara? And then the malachim agreed. So the Mefarshim say that the basis of their time, what was their claim to begin with, is based on the din of bar mitzvah. What is the din of bar mitzvah? The din is that if someone buys a field, has a field to sell, and he has a neighbor who also has a field, so the neighbor has the first rights. The neighbor gets the first rights before anybody, that he could buy it. And the din goes so far that even if the seller sold it already to somebody else, who we call the lekeach, the bar metzra, the neighbor, has a right to go and take it away from him. And that's what the malachim said. Since we are in Shemayim, the Torah is in Shemayim, we are neighbors to the Torah, so we deserve the Torah first. And then the Rebbe adds, and how could the malachim l'chura taina that the Torah should be given to them when the Torah was, so to speak, to a certain degree already given to the Eden? Because in the Torah it says, Sabbath b'nei Yisrael, Dabar b'nei Yisrael. So the Rebbe says, the reason they still had a taina, because as we said before, even if it was sold already, if the meicher sold it to the lekeach, the bar metzra could come and take it away from the lekeach after it was sold to him. Same thing here. Even though the Torah was, so to speak, already basically given to the Eden, it says Dabar b'nei Yisrael, Sabbath b'nei Yisrael. Nevertheless, the malachim had a taina that even if it was sold, we come, we deserve it, so maybe we could take it away. Here in Orah 11, the Rebbe writes, when he says that even after the mechira, in the Pnim he says in the Sikha, after the mechira, you could push away mesalig the lekeach from the field and you give it to the bar metzra. So the Rebbe says, Adarabah, ikadin the bar metzra, the main din of the bar metzra is not in the seller. It's not the din that the seller can't sell it to somebody else, but to the bar metzra. It's a din on the buyer, that if someone buys it, he has a right to go away and give it over to the bar metzra. So the chiyuv is really on the, not on the meicher, but it's on the lekeach, not on the meicher. And the Rebbe brings from Rashi, Metzia, etc., etc. Then the Rebbe continues. So then, if the din is to the lekeach, why did they come to the Eibishter and give the Torah to us? The Eibishter here is the seller. Moshe Rabbeinu representing the Eden is the buyer. The Malachim are the bar metzra. They want the Torah as a din of bar metzra. And the din of bar metzra is on the lekeach. So they should come to Moshe. Why did they come to the Eibishter? So the Rebbe says, Yashleimer, he answers it two truths. One is kivish et sof tzorach Moshe lachziro l'shamayim imkin afucha metar telomali. Al derech ksubis kuf yudam ad aleph. That the reason they came to the Eibishter, really the taina should be to Moshe Rabbeinu. He's the buyer. He's the lekeach. But what's Moshe Rabbeinu going to do? When the bar metzra comes and he sees someone else bought it and he wants to take it away, he goes he could go lechatchila to the buyer, leave it. What's going to happen? The buyer will have to go back to the seller and say, you sold me something, and he'll have to get out and give it back to the seller, and the seller will give it to them. So they thought, why should we go to the buyer? And then we'll have to get back to the seller, go lechatchila to the seller. Like the Gemara says in Ksubas Daf Kuf Yudam Ad Aleph, the Gemara talks there about a case where one Reuben has, let's say, a star, Shimon owes him $100, and Shimon has a star, Reuben owes him $100. So one opinion is Reuben has to pay Shimon, Shimon has to pay Reuben. There are two different chayvus. And one opinion is, why do that? Let each one keep it. That's it. Why go pay to Reuben and Reuben have to give you back the money? Same thing here. The Rabbi uses the same idea. Why should we talk to the lekeach and then have to go back to the meicher, to the Eibishter? And Mashenke by the Zomelak, where do we know that the ikid is the halach of din of the is on the buyer, not on the seller? Is from the din is that if the buyer happened to be a goy, then there's no din of the metzra. And the pashtas, the way the Gemara says there, it's in pashtas where Rasha learns, because the goy doesn't have a din. There's no dinim of a metzra on a goy. He doesn't, not under this jurisdiction of these dinim. So since you can't kick him out, so there's no din of bar mitzvah. You sold it to a goy. So from there we see that the din of bar mitzvah is on a goy. So the Rebbe says that in the case of a goy, there's nothing you could do. That's why the case of a goy, you can't go to the buyer. You can't go to the seller either. Say, well, avoid the buyer because the seller says he's a goy and sof he's not under this din. Mashenkin aber in the case where it's not a goy, in this case, so why would they have to go to Moshe, and Moshe would go back to the Eibishter? They went straight to the Eibishter. So the reason why they went to the Taina to the Eibishter, the Rebbe says the first reason, because practical reasons. Why go through the tirche, so to speak, of going to Moshe and then having go back to the Eibishter? Look at Chil went to the Eibishter. Then the Rebbe says a second thing. In other words, the reason they went to the Eibishter, who is in this case the seller, because the seller also has a din that he's not allowed to do it. So they came taining to the seller. Why'd you do it? What din does he have? We just said the din is on the lekeach, not on the meicher. So the Rebbe says he has a din of lifnei iver. Because he sold it to the lekeach is aver on the isur, so he's aver on lifnei iver, lesita michshel, that you're not allowed to cause someone to do an avera. So since the meicher also has an isur, so the bar mitzvah could go straight to the meicher. You did something wrong and go to him. But then the Rebbe says that there's a problem a little bit with this teretz, and the better teretz, so to speak, seems to be the previous teretz. And he says like this, avalap, is that tzorechiyun? Based on that, we have to understand. If we're going to say the reason is because of the meicher also has lifnei iver, so tzorechiyun, you have to understand, sof, yesh ala meicher iser. So sof kol sof, the meicher also has an iser. Ashein iser de bar mitzvah, even though it's not iser de bar mitzvah, it's iser lifnei iver. But he also has an iser. Mashenkin, if you're going to use the answer why they came to the Eibishter, not to Moshe, because Afucha Matarsa, that there's no reason to go around, they went straight to the Eibishter, but not because the Eibishter, the Meicher, has a problem here. So it's Tircha Ba'alma, it's only a Tircha that they wanted to avoid. So by going to the Eibishter, to the Meicher, not because the Meicher has any Yisr. So the Rebbe seems to be saying, and this is in parentheses, he seems to be saying here, that the Maila, the first shot over the second, that according to the second shot, why they came to the Eibishter, because the Meicher has lifnei iver, is a tzorechiyun. What's the tzorechiyun? What is not understood? Because sof kosov, the Meicher has a iser. So the Meicher has a, why is that? What does it the Rebbe mean here? That if you say the second shot, because there's a iser of lifnei iver on the Meicher, then there means the Meicher has an iser. It's not the iser of our mitzvah, but there's still a iser. So what's the problem? And he has a iser, and that's a good reason why they went to him. So the Pashtas, we have to learn that the tzorechiyun is that it doesn't fit to the din that in Meicher has no Yisr. We just said that we see from the case of the Goy that the Meicher has no Yisr. So if we're going to give the reason why they went to the Eivish to the Meicher is because of Lifnei Iver, means that there is a Yisr. So it doesn't fit to the klal that we know that there is no Yisr on the Meicher. If you give the reason because practical reasons only for Tirche, we're not saying there's a Yisr of Lifnei Iver. So Taket fits to say that there is no Yisr on the Meicher. But if you give the reason of Lifnei Iver, means we're telling us that there is Yisr of Lifnei Iver on the Meicher. So how do we say there is no Yisr on the Meicher? There is a Yisr on the Meicher. But Chura, that's not understood. Who cares what reason we give why they went to the Meicher? The bottom line is there is Lifnei Iver. If you cause somebody to do an Aveira, you're able to Lifnei Iver, let's see the Michshel. So in this case, you should be able to go to the Meicher. Now, whether that's the reason why they went to them, even if you're not going to give that reason, you're going to give the reason they went to the Meicher, it's a different reason. Does that take away the fact that there's Lifnei Iver? The kasha is, how could you say that there's Lifnei Iver? Wait, it seems Poshep Shad in the Horror. How could you say there's a Yisr of Lifnei Iver when we know that there's no Yisr on the Meicher? But if there is a Lifnei Iver on the Meicher, then how do you say there's no Yisr? But that has nothing to do what we're going to answer why they went to the Eibishter, why they went to the Meicher. Let's say the answer why they went to Meicher because they wanted to avoid the Tirche. There's still Lifnei Iver. Why shouldn't there be Lifnei Iver? Has nothing to do with how you answer why they went to the Meicher. That's a din for itself. Is there Lifnei Iver or not? The Pashtas, there is Lifnei Iver. So what does Rabbi mean that according to the Svara that the reason they went to the Meicher is because of Lifnei Iver? We got a problem. The problem is that means there's a Yisr. But they give the other reason, we have no problem. The problem still exists. Whether that's the reason why they went to the Eibishter, the Meicher or not, doesn't matter. There's a problem of Lifnei Iver. Must be pshad that the Rebbe is giving a mokim that there is not Lifnei Iver here. So if you give the reason why they went to the Eibishter, because Lifnei Iver, you're telling us that they're Lifnei Iver. So you're machriach that there's Lifnei Iver, and that is a problem. The problem is that we know that there's no Yisr on the Meicher. If you give the other reason, who says there's Lifnei Iver? There's a possibility. The reason they went to the Meicher is because of the Tirche, and there's taka no Lifnei Iver. That means that the Rebbe says here, comes out here that there is really not for sure that there's lifnei. There's a possibility there is no lifnei. Why would there be a possibility there is no lifnei? Unless you say that's the reason they went. So you're saying that there is lifnei. But what's the reason why there's a possibility that there's no lifnei? Since because the Meicher caused the Lekeach to do an Aveira, so he's ever lifnei. So l'chura you could say like this. We know there is a Schapiro b'negei lifnei. Rebbe has the Schapiro in Chelek Yudalef, Pashik Yisisa, and Chelek Lamates, and the Sofas b'negei in Geras Atshuva, brings from the Rakachova. There is a Schapiro and lifnei. Is lifnei a Isser Kloli or Isser Proti? Does that mean like that? Is there a Isser Kloli, a general Isser, that you're not allowed to cause somebody to do an Aveira? So whatever Aveira you cause them to do, you're able on the same Isser. There's a Isser lifnei in front of a blind person. You cause them to do an Aveira, you cause the blind person to stumble. You did an Isser of causing somebody to do wrong. Whether you cause them to do Chas v'Shalom Isser of Shabbos or you cause them Isser of Chometz, it's all the same. You cause somebody to do an Isser. There's another Svarat, this Lifnei is Isser Proti. Lifnei is a prat in every Aveira. If you cause the person to be Mechal Shabbos, you're Aver a Lifnei of Shabbos. If you cause them Chas v'Shalom to eat Yom Kippur, you're Aver a Lifnei of Yom Kippur. In every Aveira, there is a din of Lifnei. Lifnei is a prat in every Aveira. One of the differences between the two is whether if a person is machshel somebody to do an Aveira, the Rabbanon is the Aver a Lifnei deraisa. If you say it's a prat in every Aveira, then it's impossible to say that you're Aver, if you machshel somebody in the Isser of the Rabbanon, let's say to eat chol, you're Aver a Lifnei deraisa when the whole Lifnei is a prat in the Aveira. How could it be worse than the Aveira itself? The Aveira contains in it that you can't do it yourself, and then you can do this also to somebody else, make somebody else do it. But if the Aveira itself is a Rabbanon, how could you be able to Isser Lifnei deraisa? If it's Isser Kloli, you say the Torah says that you're not allowed to cause someone to do something wrong. You cause to do something wrong. So you could be able to Isser deraisa, even though the Aveira itself is, you called him to do Isser Rabbanon, you're able to Lifnei deraisa, even though the Isser is itself the Rabbanon. Because there's a generalist, you can't cause, you're not allowed to cause somebody to do an Aveira. Now there's another prat here that we have to say, that even if it's Isser Kloli, the Mele, you could be Aver Isser deraisa of Lifnei Iver when you cause them to do Isser Rabbanon. Actually, Tosfos holds like that. Another Rishonim hold like that you're Aver and Isser deraisa of Lifnei Iver, even if you cause them to do Isser Rabbanon, also has to go with another prat. Does the deraisa recognize the Rabbanon? As far as the deraisa is concerned, there is no Rabbanon. All these Isur Rabbanon don't exist in the Torah. The Mele, as far as the Torah is concerned, there's nothing wrong. Or we'd say not. We say Enochanam, it's Isser Rabbanon only, but the Torah recognizes this specific Isser Rabbanon. So if we say that Torah does not recognize this Isser, because as far as there's no Isser, so it's impossible to say, even if it's a Isser Kloli, you can't say that you're Aver and Lifnei Iver deraisa when you machshel someone with the Rabbanon, even though you made him do something wrong. But as far as the Torah is concerned, it's not wrong. But maybe you're not Aver Lifnei Iver. But if you hold that deraisa recognizes that it's wrong with the Rabbanon, but as far as the Torah is concerned, it recognizes it. So the Torah recognizes that you cause them to do something wrong, but maybe it could be Lifnei Iver, midaraisa, because you do something wrong. And we find it in different places where we find such a thing. L'moshel, al derech kinyan Rabbanon mahanel l'deraisa. There are kinyonim that the Torah made, and then there are kinyonim that the Rabbanon made. What happens if a person is kind of something, the kinyan that the Rabbanon made? So midarabanan, it's a kinyan, midaraisa, it's not a kinyan. So the money these years now that you're paying, the only midrabanan. Then you went to Yimakata Sheisha with this money. Is she Mukudeshes or not? L'chura, midraisa, she can be Mukudesh because midraisa, it's not your money. And if it's not your money, you can be Makadesh. Kedushin is not chal if you're Makadesh with someone else's money or money that's not yours. Nevertheless, the din is not like that. Kinyan Rabbanan Mahana L'deraisa. That after you were Kaina Midrabanan, now it became Midaraisa yours. Because Midaraisa recognized the fact that there's a kinyan here. That's one example that we find in the Sinyan. Give another example. Shavuos depends on Sfira. Shavuos has no date in the Torah. When you finish counting 49 days of Sfira, that next day is Shavuos. That's what it says in the Torah. Most poskim hold that Sfira is the Rabbanon. How could Shavuos be the Raisa? The Shavuos comes as a result of Sfira, of the counting Sfira, but Midaraisa, the counting doesn't mean anything. So you didn't count. He didn't count, so there can be Shavuos. But we don't say that Shavuos is the Raisa nowadays. The answer is, the pale you count, and you count it because there's a mitzvah Rabbanon. So the Raisa recognizes the fact that there was a mitzvah of counting. But if it recognizes that there was a concept of counting, the Mele could kosh Shavuos deraisa. Counting without a mitzvah is like nothing. Count today is one, tomorrow I could count it yesterday one, today two, I could count anything I want. When makes this day 1, 2, 3? When there's a mitzvah. But the shaila is it's only a mitzvah derabanan. So if the deraisa doesn't recognize it, then you didn't count. But we say Shavuos is deraisa. A similar deraisa recognizes the rabbanon. We find other cases. The Moshe the Gemara says in Gittin that Hillel made a prusbul, but it's only because Shemitah is the rabbanon, so he made a prusbul. Why did he make the prusbul? Because people should not be over on the deraisa. The Torah says there's a law to not lend money to somebody because you know Shemitah is coming and you're afraid you won't get your money back. You're not allowed to not lend the money because of that. So the Gemara says, and I'll tell you that Hillel saw people are over on Mashakos of the Torah. They're over on the posting of the Torah where it says, Korva, Shnasa, Shevesh, Shnasa, Shemitah. If Shemitah comes, you're not going to lend them, it's Aveda. The Lashon is you're over on the Torah. When you're over on the Torah, the I said there is no Shemitah. According to some the opinions in Gemara, going into the Gemara, there is no Shemitah. If there is no Shemitah, you can't say I'm over on the by saying Korva, Shnasa, Shevesh, Shnasa, Shemitah. I'm not lending. If a person doesn't lend money, stam a person. He's not over on the Sisa. It's only over if he doesn't lend it because of Shemitah. But if the Raisa there is no Shemitah, how could it be over on this? Elamai, we see here that the Raisa recognizes the Rabbanan. The Rabbanan made it Shemitah, the Raisa is ever Shemitah. Talk about the Rabbanan, but the Raisa recognizes it. And same thing you find in other places also. There's a place in Sukkah that according to Shammai, that you're not allowed to sit in the Sukkah only if the size is that you can have the table inside. And there it says that according to them, there's a story that they went, and anyway, they said if you did that, you never like Yamta mitzvahs Sukkah miyomecha. Shammai said that you never were Mekayim the mitzvah of Sukkah if you did it. So Teisha says you weren't Mekayim midaraisa. Because the Raisa recognized that the Rabbanan made the mitzvah. That's not the same example as others, but there's example. But the bottom line is the Torah does recognize that the Rabbanan. The Torah recognizes the Rabbanan. So therefore, if you are machshel somebody in Isa the Rabbanon, the Torah recognizes that you were machshel him and doing an Aveira. So if you're machshel him and doing an Aveira, you're Aver on the Isur of Lifnei Iver Midaraisa. But if you would hold that Lifnei Iver is a prat in every Aveira, then it's impossible to say that. Lifnei Iver is a prat in every Aveira. So what's Lifnei Iver? Shabbos has an Isur of doing Shabbos yourself, and there's an Isur Lifnei Iver in Shabbos. There's an Isur Iver in Chometz Kedema. But if the whole Isur is the Rabbanon, how could you be able on Lifnei Iver Deraisa? Like it can't be able on Lifnei Iver Deraisa. So what the Rebbe says here is that if you hold that the reason why they spoke to the Meicher, to the Eibishter, is because you're Eber on Lifnei Iver, that means that you're Eber on Lifnei Iver Mideraisa, even though the Din of Bar Metzger is the Rabbanon. So you're Eber on Lifnei Iver Mideraisa. So you're paskening, so to speak, that you're Eber on Lifnei Iver Mideraisa. That's the reason why they went. But if you don't say that, if we're going to say that Lifnei Iver is a prat in every Aveira, then you can never be able on the Din of Bar Metzger, Lifnei Iver Deraisa. So if you can't be able, so there's no Lifnei Iver Deraisa. And that's what the Rebbe is saying here. That if you're going to give the reason why you're Iver, why they went to the Eibishter, because the Meicher also has a Isur Lifnei Iver Deraisa, then you're saying there's a Isur Deraisa. And then there's a problem with that. You're saying that there's Isur Deraisa on the Meicher of Lifnei Iver, when the Gemara seems to be saying that there's no Isur on the Meicher. Ashenken, if you say the reason they went to the Meicher is because to avoid the Tirche, so we're not saying there's Lifnei Iver with the Deraisa there. I'm not saying it. Maybe yeah, maybe not, but we're not saying it. So it's no. So it could be there is no Lifnei Iver Deraisa. And if there's no Lifnei Iver Deraisa, we understand why the Gemara says that there is no Isur on the Meicher because no Lifnei Iver. And the Rebbe says here, when he says Apizet Zorechiyun, Sof Sof Yesh Ala Meicher Isur, he says Af Shein Isur de Bar Metzger. When he says that you're Sof Kosov, how could you say it when that means? How could you say there's no Isur on the Meicher when there is a Isur of Lifnei Iver, even though he says it's not Bar Metzger? That means he's going here according to the Svara that it's Isur Kloli, not the Isur on the Metzger. So if it's an Isur Kloli, then you could be able to Lifnei Iver Deraisa, even though the Aveira is the Rabbanan, the Din of Bar Metzger is the Rabbanan, you could be able to Isur Deraisa because we're talking about Isur Kloli. But then the Shayla doesn't fit the Gemara. But if you learn the other way, If you learn the reason is because of avoid tircha, we're not saying there's Isur. So maybe it's no Isur deraisa. There's no Isur deraisa of lifnei even on the meicher, and that's why the Gemara says there is no Isur of lifnei of bar metzra on the meicher. There's no Isur on the meicher, no Isur b'chal on the meicher, because there's no Isur lifnei even. Elamai, one might ask, like will be able to lifnei v'derabanan. That could be. Since there's a Isur v'derabanan, so you're causing somebody else to do an Isur v'derabanan, the Isur of going against the din of bar metzra, you're causing the lekayach to buy it. The male, you're causing Isur v'derabanan, so why aren't you able to lifnei v'deraisa? In the raisa they're not. If you hold it's a prat in every avera, you're not able. So there's a possibility you're not able to raisa. Lifnei v'deraisa. That's what Rabbi makes in place. That according, if you say one svara, then you're telling us it's a lifnei. That's schwer with the Gemara, that there's no Isur on the Meicher. But if you don't, then maybe there's no Isur. So in a Chanama, there's no Isur deraisa, but maybe there's, there should be Isur derabanan of Lifnei Iver. Lifnei Iver derabanan. But the answer is, the moment we say it's Lifnei Iver derabanan, there's a possibility to say that in certain cases there's no Lifnei Iver at all. Because if it's a din Lifnei Iver derabanan, there's a klal heim omru v'heim ramu, the Rabbanan could make restrictions. The Rabbanan could say that in this din, the din is kach v'kach, whatever they decide. So the Rabbanan are able to decide that on this din of the Rabbanan, we don't give it, we say there's no lifnei iver here. Nothing with the Rabbanan. When it's a din that I say, we're the Rabbanan, not balabatin, to tell you when you're able to lifnei iver that I say. But on lifnei iver the Rabbanan, they're balabatin. So there is a possibility to say that if lifnei iver is a din in every mitzvah, in every avera, so when you do avera the Rabbanan, the lifnei iver is not midaraisa. So there, the only thing could be a lifnei iver the Rabbanan. But we're not sure. Maybe the Rabbanan said not. Maybe the Rabbanan said there's not even a Yisur of lifnei iver here with the Rabbanan. So we're not machliach. So you still could fit to the Gemara. Maybe there's no Yisur Rabbanan lifnei iver, so it fits to the Gemara. There's no Yisur at all on the Meicher. So he says, but if you say that there's a Yisur of lifnei iver, then we're saying clearly, which means that I say, we're saying clearly that there is lifnei iver. But if you don't say that, if you say it's a Yisur prati, there's still a possibility. So the Rebbe says it's not sure that there's a Yisur of lifnei iver. Not sure as ifne deraisa. There's a possibility it's ifne deraisa, and that's why we could say the answer why they went to the meicher, because he has a isur, also a isur of lifnei deraisa. But we're not sure. We're not even sure if there's a isur of lifnei deraisa, because maybe the Rabbanan said not. So here the bottom line is that the Rebbe gives a place for two svaras. One svara is that there is a din of lifnei iver by the meicher selling it to the lakeach, not to the bar metzra. And there's a svara, maybe not. That's what he says. According to the svara of lifnei iver, we're making sure, but the slapdafker maybe is better than the other text. But it comes out that the Rebbe says there's a mok in my head and mok in my hin, both ways. We look in Chelek Yutes and Pashas Vaschana Sicha Gimel. There's a whole Sicha, that the first Chelek of the Sicha is all about dinim of bar metzra. And there the Rebbe writes with the Pashtas in Ha'ara 16, or the Eiluk with the Sichas, quotes look at the Sichas Chelek Yutes, the one we're talking about, Omer 29, Ha'ara 11, Shala Meicher, yes, Yisur lifnei iver. Yeah, he makes it in Tapashtas. In the Sikha, the way we learned it, seemingly, unless we learn wrong shot, but it's seemingly when he says Sorechim that you don't be machriach that there's lifnei iver because it doesn't fit. That means that there's a mokim to say the other way. If you say that he didn't do it, he went to the Eibishter because of the tircha, there's no right, there's lifnei iver. And that's better because it fits more to the Gemara that there's no Isra on the Meicher. But there's a Sofik by the Rebbe, there's a Tzorechim. Here the Rebbe says Tapashtas. See, in the Sikha there, Gufa, there's a little Shula Gilliam where it says, Re'eluk with the Sichas Chelek Yutes, Sofam at 55 Eilach. That was obviously added after they printed the Sefer, because when the Sikha, that Sikha Shavuos came out, Chelek Yutes wasn't out yet. That Sikha wasn't even written yet. So that wasn't written there. Later on, when the Sikha Chelek Yutes came out, that's when they added this. So there, it just adds, look here. But here, it was after that Sikha was written. And here the Rebbe writes, clearly, Re'eluk with the Sichas, Chelek Yutes, Omer 29 or 11 Shala Meicher Yasha Isur lifnei iver. The Meicher is lifnei iver. And it's not only that. The Rebbe here in the Sikha goes in to explain here like this. Rebbe has Schapiro in the din of bar metzra. Interesting, very interesting Sikha. The Rebbe says there are two ifanim you can learn the union of the din of bar metzra. One is that this is a good thing. Be'etzem, it's a good thing to do. That's where the union of bar metzra comes in. That means, I'm reading it in English, but I'm reading it from the Sikha in Chelek Yutes, that there's nothing missing in the kinyan of the Lekeach. The Lekeach buys the field that he shouldn't have bought. There's nothing wrong. It's a din. But the Chachomim were mechayiv him to have teva yosher v'tev, and therefore he should give it back to the bar mitzvah. There's another way to learn that the chiyuv of asisa yosher v'tev tutuv makes up that the bar mitzvah gets a certain ownership over the soda of his neighbor, and therefore this that the lekeach has to give away the field back to the bar mitzvah is not only it's a good thing to do, it's right because it's easier for him. If he has a field next to it, it'll be easier for him. If he gets both fields together, he'll save money. He'll have one guard and he'll have one worker. It's good for him. But besides that, it's because it has a shaykhas to him. And he quotes in the Mukha Yosef, there in Bab Metzia Kuvches, Ki'ilu yesh lektsas kinyan begufa shel karka, as if the bar mitzvah has a certain kinyan in the karka. It's not just that there's a good thing to do. And then the Rebbe goes on to say that the difference between these two ifanim, according to the first way, that it's just a gather of good hanhogeh. So it was said to the lekeach. The lekeach says, do a favor to the guy. So we're telling the lekeach, do a favor to the guy and give him. If he doesn't want, Bezdin will force him. According to the second way, it's a din in the karka. Now, taka, it comes off from basisa yosher v'tev, and that is said to the lekeach. Why should you keep it? Give it to him. But the tzivui and the kiyum b'peil is negate to Bezdin. There's a din of asisa yosher, and Bezdin has to do that. And the Rebbe wants to say it's a machlekes between the Rambam and Rashi. And he's medayik in the Lashenis. The Lashenis from Rashi is, so he says, the says ledas Rashi is an hoget teve was batzit sich in ganzen zum lekeach. It's zu lekeach. And he quotes from the Lashenis from Rashi what the lekeach has to do. And by Zovim La'akum, if you sell it to a goy, the lekeach is a goy. Since the whole din is only to the lekeach, we can't tell the goy to leave because there's no din bar mitzvah to a goy. The das Rambam over, it's not just an hogeteva. It's not. He's a sneak nor an hogeteva, but it is that what happened here that he is keinet. Shazach was is beetzem teiv. Und das wird umgetan mit dem Keich der Chachomim geben der bar mitzvah as kinyan in skuf asode. It's be'etzem good. So the Chachomim said, since it's be'etzem good, we give you a kinyan in the field. And therefore, the Rebbe says, the Rambam, when he quotes the din by goy, he doesn't say like the Gemara says, because there's no din bar mitzvah by a goy. He says something else, he skips that. Because there's a din, according to the Rambam, that it's a general din. It's not afkan the lekeach, it's a general on everybody. So everybody involved. So there, by a goy, is a different reason. Not because there is no din of a mitzvah to a goy. And Ha'ara 16, the one that I mentioned before, where the Rebbe says, the Rebbe says, Yashlem, Ula Yashlem, Eid Nafkimina. According to the Rambam, according to the Rambam, when does the din of Asisa Yosher Batev start? The moment that, since the Metzra has a kinyan in the field, when does he get the kinyan? When he buys his field next to the neighbor. So it's something that's negated to the Meicher, because there's something missing in the bailus of the Meicher. The Bar Metzra has a certain kinyan in the Meicher, so the Meicher has a certain lack in his kinyan. Part of it belongs, so to speak, to the Bar Metzra. And therefore, there's also a din, so to speak, on the Meicher, because there's a kinyan here that he's missing. So the reason he has to sell it, so he also has a reason to sell it to Bar Metzra, because he can't sell it to the other guy, because he's missing a certain kinyan. That part of the kinyan belongs to the Bar Metzra. Mashenkin, if it's only a hanhoget teva that the lekeach has to do after he bought it, that's when it starts, that he has to do a favor to the Bar Metzra and give it to him. Ein shaychus la mecher. So when does the connection come? Only when he bought, the lekeach bought it. But till the lekeach bought it, the Bar Metzra has no connection to him. And the Rebbe quotes here. And then the Rebbe says, one that we said before, so Bapasha, what comes out here? This Re'eluk Utesichas, and the Rebbe quotes the Ha'ara that we're talking about in Shavuos as a separate paragraph, is mashmeh, that after he says that according to the Rambam, it's chal also on the Meicher, because it's good b'chlal for everybody. Everybody has to get involved. The Meicher also. And the Meiler comes out that the Bar Metzra has a chelik kinyan in it. The Meiler, the Meicher can't sell it to anybody else, because there's a certain kinyan the Bar Metzra has. Then he says, according to the other pshat, according to Rashi pshat, doesn't have anything to do with the Meicher. Then the Rebbe says, which seems to be saying that whichever way you learn, there is a Isser on the Meicher because of Isser Lifnei Iver. So it comes out, what I'm saying now, that no matter how we learn, it seems from the Sikha, from those Ha'oris, that the Rebbe learns here clearly that there is a Isser of Lifnei Iver on the Meicher. The way we learned before in the Sikha of Shavuos, the Rebbe makes it Tzorech Iyun, and there he gives a place that there is no Isser Lifnei Iver on the Meicher. It could be there is a Isser. That's why it's possible. The reason why they went to the Eibush to the Meicher because they has the Isser. But the Rebbe says there's another way to learn, and it's not because of that. And there is no Lifnei Iver, as we said. And that's what the Rebbe said, Tzorech Iyun. The other way that you machriach, that's Lifnei Iver. That's hard to say. So the shaila is, how does it fit to the Rebbe says here that for sure, that no matter which way we learn, he doesn't say these words, but after he says both shittas, then a new paragraph, but look over there, you'll see the Meicher has a Isser Lifnei Iver. There's mashman that's for both. So I want to say that it's not the pshat like that. This paragraph that look at the Sichas Chelek, and you'll see that the Meicher has a Isur only goes on the second thing. There's 3 paragraphs here. First, he explains the shit of the Rambam that it goes on the Meicher too, because since the Bar Metzler has a Ksas Kinyan, the Meicher has a Isur to sell to somebody else. Then the next paragraph he says Mashenkin, according to the other opinion, it doesn't go on the Meicher. And then the Rebbe says, look at the Sichas, there's Isur Lifnei Iver. So I want to say that when the Rebbe says here, look at the Sichas, that there's Isur of Lifnei Iver, goes only on the second, not on the first. On the second means on the one that holds that there's no Isur on the Meicher. Then there's a Isur of Lifnei Iver. Mashenkin, if you learn like the Rambam, the way in the first paragraph, learn like the Rambam, who says that there's a Ksas Kinyan, that the Bar Metzler has in this field, there's no Isur of Lifnei Iver. The Meicher has to sell it to the Bar Metzler, but there's no din of Lifnei Iver. I'll explain why. Because in the second way, that it's not a din on the Meicher, because the Ksas Kinyan of the Bar Metzler, so there's a din only on the Lekeach. So there's a halacha that the Chachamim made on the Lekeach based on the Sisa Yosher HaTeiv. The Lekeach has to give it back, not buy it, or you have to give it back to the Bar Metzler. If you are machshel somebody who's doing an Aveira against the din, you are able to Lifnei Iver. Now, it could be Lifnei Iver deraisa, could be Lifnei Iver derabanan. If it's a din derabanan, and if you hold that it's a prat in every Aveira, it could be Lifnei Iver derabanan. You're machshel someone doing an Aveira. So in that case, it is according to the first way, that the reason why the Meicher is involved, because there's a Ksas Kinyan that the Bar Metzler has, then the Chachamim, I asked before, why would the Chachamim not make a Isur of Lifnei Iver midarabanan? I said, maybe midarabanan also not. I'm saying why. Since the Rabbanan gave the Lekeach, the Bar Metzler, a Ksas Kinyan, so if the Bar Metzler has the Ksas Kinyan, so the reason why the Meicher can't sell it to anybody else is not a din, it's not because of the din. They gave a special inyan that is, you're lacking your kinyan. You have no right to sell it, not b'tzad the din. According to the second way, there's the only thing is there's a din on the lekeach. The Rabbanan said the lekeach has to give it up. Therefore, if you help the lekeach do his aveira, you're able a Lifnei Iver. It could be Lifnei Iver deraisa, it could be from the Rabbanan. Depends if it's like in quality in your proti. But if you hold that the reason why the Meicher has a shaykhs to it is because of the kinyan. So on one hand, it means that it's stronger. According to the second way, you don't really have a releaser. It's only on the lekeach. According to the first way, we're saying that because the Bar Metzler has a ksas kinyan, so the Bar Metzler's keach of the field is stronger. It has a kinyan in it. But on the other hand, it's weaker. The guy won't have a Lifnei Iver. Lifnei Iver is in the case of an aveira, of a mitzvah, of a din. But here's a new din. They did something else. All they said was, we want, because he has a ksas kinyan, you can't sell it. So they didn't make, so there's no Lifnei Iver of an aveira. He has his own thing. He has thing that he shouldn't sell it. And Tak has it. He shouldn't sell it. But it's not because of the Lifnei Iver of an aveira. There's no aveira here. The shayla who it belongs to. And we're telling you it doesn't belong to you 100%, so you don't have 100% right to sell it to whoever you want. And if you sell it, you sold something that's not basically not yours. That's not a getter of Lifnei Iver. So it comes out that when the Rebbe writes here, the Rei L'Kut Sichas Chelek Ches, he's not saying that no matter which way you learn, for sure there's a Lifnei Iver, which would not fit to the way he says in our Sikh in Shavuos, where he says there's a Tzorech Iyun, maybe there's no Lifnei Iver. Because he's only saying it if you say the second way. But if you say the first way, according to the Rambam, then Taka there's no Lifnei Iver, because it's a different din. It's a din of kinyan. Chachamim gave him a kinyan, took away a little bit of your kinyan, so that's why you can do it. But it's not a getter of doing, has a din. Since according to the Rambam, it's a general in your kloli, and a kloli means that even the Meicher has to do it. But because of that, what did they do? Because in your kloli, they They gave the bar mitzvah exas kinyan. If they gave him exas kinyan, so the meicher has nothing to do with that, with being a lifnei iver of an avera. What they did was they gave him exas kinyan, and b'meile, so lifnei iver, there's still a mokem to say that there's no lifnei iver even after the Rebbe writes the order that you could say, maybe not, I don't know, but this you could say that. You could say a shaila that sof kol sof. The same shaila that Rebbe asks in the Sikha of Shavuos, that if you say that there's lifnei iver, it means that there is a iser on the meicher, tzorechiyun. And we said, why is it tzorechiyun? Because it doesn't fit to the Gemara where it seems to be saying that the meicher has no iser. But we're saying now, when is there no lifnei iver if you go according to the Rambam? I'm saying that this line that it has lifnei iver goes according to Rashi, but doesn't go according to the Rambam. And we said in the Sikha that the Rambam does not really hold that there's no din on the lekeach, on the meicher, only on the lekeach. He holds it's a close din on everybody, and because of that there's a ksas kinyan. So einochaname, there is the whole kasha that Rebbe asks sorry here that Lafi said there is sof yesh isra meicher isur. The way I'm explaining now, we're only fit if you learn the way the Sikha in Chelek according to Rashi, that there's a din on the lekeach, no din on the meicher. But if you have lifnei iver, there's a din on the meicher too, because it's lifnei iver. But if you go according to the Rambam, and the Rebbe says this, I'm learning Pshat, he's saying it according to Rashi, not according to Rambam. According to the Rambam, there is a din on taka, a din on the meicher too, and it's not you could leave it. It's a kinyan. There's a special din al kinyan. So that's it, and it fits to the fact that there's no kasha that it doesn't fit to the din, that there's no din lifnei iver on the meicher. There is a din of lifnei iver, not lifnei iver. There's no din of bar mitzvah, on the meicher. There is a din of bar mitzvah on the meicher. It's a kinyan, but nothing to do with lifnei iver, because when it comes to kinyanim, it's a different din. It's not din lifnei iver. So maybe the both sichas fit. Maybe when the Rebbe, when the Tzayin here, Chelek Ches Shavuos, Leibel could the Chelek Ches. Maybe this means, and he says Sof Omet 55 ve'elech comes to this order. This order has to do with what he said before, that there's a tzorechiyah, whether there's a lifnei iver or not. And here he says befedish that there is a lifnei iver, but he says it only after the din according to Rashi. According to the Rambam Taka, there is a din on the meicher also, but not lifnei iver. And that's why the Rebbe says, if you learn that the reason they spoke to the Eibishter, to the meicher, because they didn't avoid the tircha, not because the meicher has a isur, is better, because then you're not forcing that there's a din of lifnei iver, and there is a possibility that there is no din of lifnei iver if you learn like the Rambam that it's only a gather of a kinyan.